Hello and welcome. My name's Angie Holden and I'm the blogger behind the Country Chic Cottage. So we're back today with another AutoPress experiment. Today I'm experimenting with 10 things that all require heavy pressure in order to press them, and we're going to see if the AutoPress will work in these cases. Now, why am I doing this? So the first thing is the AutoPress pressure is not adjustable. So it auto sets the pressure and you have no adjustment. So you can't do light, medium, heavy pressure. There's only one pressure with the AutoPress itself. Second, I'm doing an entire series on the AutoPress, testing it under different circumstances and with different blanks. Because it's such a big purchase, I want to be sure to put it through all the tests so I can give my final results in the last video on how I feel about the AutoPress, who should buy it, maybe who shouldn't, what works, maybe what doesn't, and give you all the options for your purchasing needs. So what are we going to test today? So I'm going to test screen print transfers, puff HTV, printable heat transfers, tons of different sublimation blanks that require heavy pressure, as well as a sublimation foil product that I've used before that also uses heavy pressure. So I'm going to test all of these, pressing them in my AutoPress, and we're just going to take a look at the results, see what happens with each of these products, find out if they will work in the Cricut AutoPress. So let's head to the AutoPress and start pressing. First up, I'm going to do some foil over sublimation. You do need to preheat the pad on the AutoPress in order to do this project. This is Subli finishing foil. I put my cloth in the AutoPress first and preheat it. This is important to remove any moisture. While I'm doing this, keeping everything hot, I'm printing my sublimation print. So this one is all about being quick. I added my sublimation print, pressed it down, and I do have another video on this if you're interested in how to do it. Then we'll add the Subli finishing foil to the top, press that once again, and then we actually add the foil. Now all this has to happen really quickly, and it does call for heavy pressure. Once the foil is done pressing, it needs to cool completely and then you can peel it back. You would need to add a finishing sheet over the top in order for it to be permanent. But I peeled this foil back and none of it really transferred to my fabric. So I'm not even going to finish this one. I'm going to call this a fail on the AutoPress. I did struggle with this product on my regular heat press and getting it to work. So I'm really not surprised that it didn't work on the AutoPress, but a little disappointed. Next up we have Cut Puff HTV. Again, this is a puff HTV and it does call for heavy pressure. I cut it with my Cricut and weighted the design. Preheated my shirt, then pressed with my AutoPress at the recommended time and temperature, peeling it back immediately. Now let's take a look at the results. With the AutoPress, there are a ton of lines in the puff, and it did not puff up as much as it should. So I pressed actually a second piece just to see what it would look like in my heat press with heavy pressure so I could compare the two. The version on my heat press puffed up a lot more, there were fewer lines, and it looked a lot better. So here you can see that the AutoPress version is on the right, and you can see all the lines. It almost looks like brains in this pink color, and how it didn't puff up very much. Then on the left, you can see the version that I pressed in my heat press, and you can see that it's smoother, puffed up more, and looks tons better. So again, I'm not happy with the results with the AutoPress with this, at least this brand of Puff HTV. Next up, I'm using a SupaColor Screen Print Transfer. These again call for heavy pressure. So you do want to pre-press your fabric, make sure there's no moisture, and then you apply the SupaColor Transfer with a Teflon sheet over the top. I'm pressing this at 320 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 seconds. Once the AutoPress lifts up, you need to peel this back immediately for best results. While peeling it back, I noticed that the transfer lifted in just a couple of areas. I just laid those back down with my fingers, added the Teflon sheet back to the top, and pressed for 30 more seconds. Then I removed it from the AutoPress. So as you can see, this one is on my shirt. So I would be nervous about this just because it did lift in this area as I peeled it up. It seems to be stuck now, but I do get nervous with these when they don't stick the first time if they are going to last the life of the garment, as these types of transfers should. So just be aware that you may need to test these transfers if you use them with the AutoPress. Next up, we're trying printable heat transfer paper. So this is an inkjet printable paper. Preheat my fabric, then add the paper, and press at the recommended temperature for the recommended time. Again, this one calls for heavy pressure on the packaging. And then you're supposed to peel back the backing sheet immediately once you lift up your heat press. So let's take a look at the results. The results were a bit disappointing. The images themselves look dull, they're not complete, and they look way different from the printed sheet that was printed off of my inkjet printer. Now, I have had trouble with this material before, and I usually use a different transfer paper, but I thought I would give this a try with the AutoPress just to see what would happen. This Can Koozie calls for heavy pressure. I preheated it, lint rolled to clean it, then I added my transfer, taped it down well, and added protected paper. This pressed at 400 degrees for 60 seconds. After the 60 seconds was up, I removed the sublimation print. And here you can see just how good this one turned out. This one looks awesome on the AutoPress. This oven mitt is at 400 degrees for 50 seconds. Again, I lint rolled and pre-pressed to remove any moisture. Then I added my sublimation print. Now, you shouldn't have anything touch the silver on the back of this oven mitt. So I did add Teflon to my heat press, and I did not add any tape to the silver portion. So you don't want any of your sublimation print hanging over the side on this blank. Then I added my transfer, taped down well, added paper to the top. Once it was covered with paper, I pressed it 400 degrees, 50 seconds, then removed my sublimation print from the oven mitt. There are a few areas where it's messed up down in the seams, but overall, I'm really happy with the way this oven mitt turned out on the AutoPress. For this tablet, you remove the paper pad from the inside, and it calls for 400 degrees for 60 seconds and heavy pressure. So you want to pre-press and lint roll, then add your transfer, tape it down well, add protective paper over the top, and go ahead and press 400 degrees, 60 seconds, heavy pressure. Once that's done, I'll remove the paper and remove the sublimation print. Then after it's cool, you can just add the paper pad back in and you have a cute notebook. I really love the way this notebook turned out, and I think it turned out perfect on the AutoPress. For this tablet cover, I went ahead and added an easy press mat to the inside. You could use a pressing pillow or anything like that. Just anything for the zipper to lift everything else up. Then I went ahead and pre-pressed and lint rolled. Then I added my sublimation print and added protective paper to the top. Pressed 400 degrees for 60 seconds. Then removed the paper as well as the sublimation print and the easy press mat from the inside. You can see just how good this one turned out. I'm in love with this tablet cover. It's perfect for your iPad or tablet to stick inside when you're traveling, and these make a great gift. Plus, they turn out great on the AutoPress. This stadium seat is huge, and I'm actually going to use a couple sublimation prints and really push the limits of the size of the AutoPress and see how far I can push it. This calls for 400 degrees for 1 minute and 30 seconds with heavy pressure. I lint rolled the blank and pre-pressed, then added the transfer. Remember, this is 2 transfers because my sublimation printer is not this large, and I've taped them together. Then I put paper on the top and the bottom and pressed 400 degrees, 1 minute, 30 seconds, then removed everything from the seat. So for this one, I did get it a little off on the AutoPress, so you need to be very, very careful if you're pushing the limits of the size to get it exactly in the middle of the AutoPress. I had some of this hanging too far off the edge, so it was hard to tell exactly where this was since it's such a thick blank. And then where I joined the pieces, you can see a line. So I've not perfected the art of joining pieces. So if I was to do one of these for myself, I would probably just do a different image on one side and leave everything white. But I did want to demonstrate if I wanted to sublimate the entire thing, what it would look like. I am impressed at how the blue is the same throughout, except for this edge where I got too far over on one side. So I do think that the AutoPress has a consistent temperature. But if you are going to do something that is the full size, you will need to watch the location when you put it into the AutoPress. But overall, I'm impressed with how the AutoPress handled this one, especially given how thick it is. Finally, I have this outlet cover. So this outlet cover is a very tricky sublimation blank under any circumstances, so we are going to see what happens. So it's 400 degrees for 4 minutes. Your transfer should be completely dry. So if you've just printed it, be sure to put it under your press for about 10 seconds. Just sort of hover the AutoPress over the top. You do want to heat tape the openings of the outlet itself. And then inside the AutoPress, we're going to have paper, a Nomex pad, more paper, the rubber mat, the plate, transfer side down. They do make a production jig for these outlet covers so you won't scratch the top of your AutoPress or heat press. I actually ordered the wrong one. So I am actually going to put the rubber pad over the top as well. And then I'm going to press 400 degrees, heavy pressure, 4 minutes. Again, you can't change the pressure on the AutoPress, so we'll just see how it does. Now these do state that you can play with the time and increase it if you have any failures. So we will see how this one turns out and go from there. So here is that sublimation outlet cover, and you probably can tell it really faded around these edges. So I would probably go for more time, but I'm not sure if the AutoPress would even do it with more time. Like, there is barely any print on the very edge. So I'm not sure if you could even get it to do it. So this might be one sublimation blank where you do need a heat press with that heavy pressure. All right, so let's talk about what did and did not work. So let's start with sublimation. So a lot of the sublimation blanks that require heavy pressure did work with the AutoPress. So when I tried to push it to the maximum size, like I was squeezing really close to the maximum size, I did get my blank off a little bit. You will need to really concentrate on getting your blank perfectly in line with the AutoPress. Now the AutoPress, the top heat plate itself, sort of rounded at the corners. Another reason you need to be careful about the placement if you're pushing it to the limit of that size. Then the sublimation plate cover did not work as well. Again, that's a really tricky blank. I'm not sure if I could get it to work on my regular heat press. Might be able to, but I'm not positive it would work without the heavy pressure, just because it's so rounded, more rounded than any other blank I've ever done in a flat press. So I'm not sure about that light cover in particular, but the rest of the blanks, they all worked great, except the seat, which I got slightly off. User error, but something to note if you are gonna use the AutoPress and wanna push it to the maximum size. All right, so those failures I had. So the Puff HTV. I have seen some people that have done Puff in their AutoPress, so it may be the brand, but I do wanna caution you that maybe not all brands would work and you might struggle getting a Puff HTV to work in the AutoPress. Next is that sublimation foil. So I struggled on my regular heat press. If you want to, I'll leave a video in the description below if you want to head to that video. I struggled on my heat press getting that product to work. I had quite a few failures, had to like really ramp up the pressure on that product to get it to stick. So I didn't think it would work in the AutoPress anyway. Wanted to try it, it did not work. So just FYI, that product is kind of tricky. Even on a heat press, it took me a while to be able to get it right. So I don't think it would work on the AutoPress even after some trial and error. Then the heat transfer paper, so the inkjet printable heat transfer paper for light materials. So I generally use the one for dark materials that does not require heavy pressure because I've had failures with the product for light before with the Easy Press. So with the Easy Press, I've not been able to use that product either. So I've had to use my heat press, really crank up the pressure to get the product for light materials to work. Now, the product for dark materials doesn't require heavy pressure. I used it in another AutoPress video. It worked on the AutoPress, it works on my heat press, it works on an Easy Press, and you can use it on light fabrics technically. So I generally use, if I want to use heat transfer paper, I usually use the one for dark materials. So I wanted to use the one for light in this video to really put the AutoPress to the test, and it did not work. And finally, the screen print transfers. So I would be cautious with those just because it lifted in the corner. So a screen print transfer is like a lifelong thing. So as soon as you apply it, if you apply it correctly, it will last for the life of the garment. Now, if applied correctly, means that they tell you it requires heavy pressure. So if you don't use heavy pressure, you are not applying it according to the directions. So if you use the AutoPress, I don't think you would be applying it to the directions. And because it lifted in that corner before I pressed it the second time, I would use extreme caution if you're going to use the AutoPress for that type of product. Get some samples, apply it to some fabrics, run it through the laundry, see what happens. So I also have the same results that I had on the AutoPress with the Easy Press. So I'm able to do that in my heat press without issue, cranking that pressure up. I'm able to press a screen print transfer. If I change over to my Easy Press, I have the same results as I did in this video. Kind of lifts off the corners, but I'm able to peel it. Then I stick it down that second time with Teflon on top. Whether or not it would last through 50, 80, whatever laundry cycles, I do not know the answer to that. So I don't know if on this one in the AutoPress if it would last that long either. So I would use caution and maybe consider a different press if you were considering the AutoPress and want to do screen print transfers. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your questions about the AutoPress and items that require heavy pressure. I think with these results, you can see that it varies. So if an item requires heavy pressure and you're using the AutoPress, it might work, it might not. I've had successes and failures both with the AutoPress with those heavy pressure items. So now, what kind of questions do you have about the AutoPress in general or the items I sublimated on? Ask those in the comment section below. If you liked this video, if it helped you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, head on over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. I'm working my way up to my full AutoPress review and a full video on Is It Right For You very, very soon. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. So thank y'all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.